Let me just start recording.
Okay.
Just give it a second.
I'm all ready for you.
Okay. I think we can start now.
Perfect.
Okay, yeah. So we're talking about your book, Jazz in Dominicana. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to mention your other book, Women in Jazz, for a second because it's won many titles, including the Global Blog Award.
Right.
Yeah, and this is your third title in 14 months, I believe.
This is the third title in 14 months. Actually, it was. I'm always looking for information, obviously, on the internet. So I ran across the Global Blog Awards 2 summers ago. And so I was reading into it and I said, wow, a blog award. And when I checked all of the previous winners, all of the winners had been blogs that were in English and about things such as feeling good, poetry, and all that. My blog is in Spanish and about jazz, but I said, well, you know, I don't lose anything by inscribing my blog into the competition. Lo and behold, in January of last year, I get the advisement from Ukiyoto that I had come in as a first finalist right after the winner and then my blog. And so I was very proud, obviously, to have been one of those winners. And in it, there was one of the prizes was for the publishing of a book by Ukiyoto. So as soon as that came out, communications with Ukiyoto has always been one of the biggest pluses. They take their time answering questions and they take their time leading through all of the processes. And that's something that I have really, really cherished, appreciated, and validated in our relationship now in our second year. So they wanted, or they suggested that I do a book from the contents of the blog, which won in 2019. I wrote 144 articles that year, and I said, well, if I do the 144 articles, it probably would be a 2 or 3 book encyclopedia, so let me not do that. So since 2017, I had been dedicating a series of interviews to various actors in the jazz community of the Dominican Republic, whether they be musicians, radio show producers, event producers, or festival organizers. So I took the interviews that I had made in 2019 and converted that into a book. So I was thinking, how can now that I'm going to write about the 7 musicians and 4 radio producers that I wrote about in 2000, that I interviewed in 2019, how can I get the biggest bang that I can for this book that's being published? So I asked if I could do it dual language. in Spanish, which is the original language, and a translation into English. So Ukiyoto said, "Well, yes, we can go ahead and publish in whichever language you send the book in." So we really went back and forth a few times because of the fact that I was doing all of the editing in Spanish. One of the first impacts that I received from Ukiyoto was that they said, since we don't have any editors in Spanish, we're going to trust that your Spanish is good. So not only was the Spanish 100% okay, but when I sent in the English, they came back that it was also perfect. So I really felt good about it. Actually, English is from how I grew up, my first language, and Spanish my second. So anyway, so I said, okay, now I have a book that's going out in Spanish and in English, and it's going to go out in the world, and it can provide various missions at the same time. It can speak to people about our jazz. It can speak to people that there's a good jazz scene in the Dominican Republic, and it can introduce some of the key players of that particular year so that people know them. So I said, okay, how can I maybe complicate the book a little bit more? I've already gone from Spanish to Spanish and English. And so I said, okay, whoever in Poland is reading about Juan Francisco Ordóñez, guitar player, he's going to maybe read it and that's it. So that's when I came up with the idea of adding a QR file into each interview. So whoever scans the quick response code with their cell phone will immediately be taken to what the QR entails.
Yeah,
so what I did
noticed
is
that in your book.
Yes, what it did was you're reading about the person, but at the same time you could be listening to his music. So now you can correlate the guitar player that I'm writing about with the guitar player that you can listen to. And so that made the book a little bit more valuable in as much as that the people are able to actually read and see and hear each one of the different interviewees. So that also made the book be of value as a tool for promotion for each of the people that I interviewed, because now they could say, I'm in a book and here's the book. So not only was I getting promotion from Ukiyoto, not only was I doing promotion from my end of Jazz and Dominicana, but I was also getting promotion from the different artists that were interviewed, because they're also proud to be able to be in a book. It ended up that without my intention being that, it was the first book ever written about jazz in the Dominican Republic. So that also was a plus. So fast forward now to September of last year, and Ukiyoto wrote to me that they would be willing to do a second title, and they suggested that I do Jazz and Dominicana, the interviews 2020. So I came back and said, yes, I will be more honored to do so, but I would not be able to do it until January of this year, because I have more interviews lined up, and surely I will not finish until December, as was the case. But I have another series that I did earlier this year, which was called Women in Jazz in the Dominican Republic. And that series was not in an interview mode. It was more of a biographical tone, mini biographies with pictures and also QR files of each one of the singers or the instrument players that were on it. And so I sent it up to Ukiyoto. They liked the idea. And thus I was able to include 50 of the 54 women that are and will be doing jazz in our country. So it's a write-up that is actually a very integral part of the history of jazz in my country. So that book I sent towards the end of 2020, and it was published by Ukiyoto at the beginning of this year. And as promised, at the beginning of the year, I was able to send up the second interview book, Jazz in Dominicana, the interview series 2020. And that
what
book,
about these artists when the book published?
excuse me?
The book, when once the book was published, did they reach out to you and congratulate you or give their well wishes or anything?
Yes, actually, once each book came out, I was able to send out a press release, and a lot of the Dominican press was very helpful in making sure that the information got out, that the books were out. Also, another thing that I did, because of the pandemic, I was not able to, besides writing, I'm a jazz producer and promoter, and I did live,
Yeah, I was
weekly
just
live.
about to ask you that.
Huh? I did weekly live jazz events here in the city of Santo Domingo, the capital of the Dominican Republic. So as soon as when the pandemic hit, since March of last year, we were not able to do a weekly event. So it was in one of those weekly events that I wanted to do the first book release. That I was never able to do. So what we did was we did a YouTube live last November that came out at the beginning of December, where we had a half-an-hour program where we did the official release of the book. These two books from this year will probably do likewise, unless in the next month or so we get back to some sort of normality. The pandemic here in the Dominican Republic is easing up a bit. So measures are being a little bit more flexible, but we're not close to being where we used to be yet. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. In the meantime, I keep writing. I have so far in the blog published 3 interviews, and for this year I have about 11 or 12 in mind. So there will be a fourth book coming out towards the beginning of next year, which will be the interviews of 2021.
Wow. Okay. So what was the process like, gathering the deciding which musicians you want to interview, and then?
Well, each year I set up more or less who I would like to interview from the standpoint of what have they done recently, and are they people that have not been in the news lately. For instance, all of the musicians that I did in the 2019 interviews, they had all released an album either the ending of 2018 or during the beginning of 2019. So the interviews I wanted to get out so that I could, via the interview, also help promote their brand new album. So that was part of the musicians that I chose. In as much as the radio producers, I had started an article in 2018 that was called "The Actors of Jazz." And there's a lot of actors in jazz that normally when you, and obviously it happens in music and all the arts, when you think about a musician, you only think of the musician, but there's a whole range of characters that are around them and behind the scenes that help to either promote, develop, or help the musician during their career. So you have, for instance, schools, conservatories, universities that are the ones that form the musicians from the beginning. You have event producers or festival organizers, which are able to give a stage so that the musician can play. You have the public, the general public that goes to see them and to back them up. Those are important players also in the jazz scene. But to me, then you have obviously the technicians, the sound guys, the light guys, the guys that carry the equipment, that tune up the equipment. These are very important as well, because they also help to make sure that what they're delivering gets delivered how they want it delivered. But to me, a key player is the radio program host, because those are the ones that take the songs that are sent to them by the musicians and give them airplay. So while in a small venue, you might have 100 people listening to a concert once in a while, because as we know, musicians don't play every day, everywhere. So you only get maybe 100 people. Their friends and their students and their fellow peers, you might have an audience from them of 150, 200 people. But when you get on the radio, then the audience
That's a big
is
audience.
Huge. It could be a small audience of 500-800 people, or it could be a huge audience of thousands of people listening. So I decided in 2019 and at the beginning of 2020 to interview the radio hosts whose radio programs heavily rotate jazz into their musical what they give to the crowd, to the public, is a lot of jazz. They're not totally jazz only radio programs, because they mix in world music, but the heavy rotation that they play is jazz. So I wanted to get them in. It's in my country, it's only 7 programs that meet those requirements. So in 2019 interviews, I did 4. And at the beginning of the 2020 interviews, I finished with the other 3. Those 7 radio programs are very important in the role that the musician has, in as much as presenting his music, staying in touch with his listeners, or sometimes they're very key in getting these new musicians known. And so to me, it was important to have them be interviewed, so that people know that there are other actors within the jazz community, which are an integral part and a very important part of not only musicians, but music being heard and being promoted worldwide.
Okay, sorry. So of course, jazz is seems like a very dominant genre in the Dominican Republic, but can you tell us a little more about the musical scene there?
Well, actually, jazz is not a major genre.
Okay.
Dominican Republic is basically known for its merengue and its bachata, which are 2 folkloric rhythmic music that was born native to the Dominican Republic. Our music, based on our heritage, is a music that's very inviting to move your feet and to dance. The Dominican Republic has a rich folkloric rhythmic heritage, due to the influx of slavery and of multiple invaders that came in throughout our history. And one of the things that happens when that happens is, excuse the redundancy, but it's that they deposit part of their culture and it becomes part of our culture. So at times that we have had invasions, let's say from the Spaniards, the Spanish culture came in. The French culture came in. So when you mix that with the different type of slaves that came from Africa during those early years of when the New World was being colonized, people don't tend to know that Africa is not only a nation of, when you think of African musical heritage, you usually think only of the drums and of the percussion instruments, but part of Africa is very rich in harmony. So they also have guitar instruments and guitar-like instruments that do not have a strong percussive heritage. So both of those areas were made to provide slaves into the Dominican Republic, and from here into the rest of the Caribbean and even into Louisiana. That's how like the slave route went. So here we are, you know, having music come in from the old world, Europe, and music coming in from Africa, and mixing with our own native Indian heritage of the Taino Indians, which were the ones that were here in the Dominican Republic. So all of a sudden you really have a huge boiling pot of music, but all of our music tends to be very joyful. It's music that invites you to move your feet. It's music that invites you to move your body, and you cannot help but either move or dance to each one of the different rhythms that we have here in our country, whether it be the merengue, whether it be the bachata, whether it be even our Latin tinged jazz or jazz fusions. It will always lead to you wanting to move your body and move your head along with the music. Sing
Dance.
if you know the words, or hum if you don't. Or grab whoever is near you and start to dance. That's the way we are basically in the Caribbean nations as a whole. The difference obviously is which European nation colonized or maintained the heavier influx. So you have like Jamaica, Trinidad. Their music, in Jamaica's cases, it came out of their mix between the slavery, the native Indians, and England. Trinidad is funny because it had a huge Indian exodus that went to Trinidad. So in Trinidad, you actually have the English music, the mixed in with Indian music, mixed in with African music. So it's very interesting. Then you have islands that had French influx, you have islands that had Dutch influx. So in those different islands, you have music that is autochthonous only to them because of the fusion or the mix of genres through their heritage.
Okay. So when this book, can we come back to the book for a second? So when did you decide to write the book, actually sit down and you want to compile everything?
Which of the three, or?
Sorry?
Which of the three? Because I didn't hear the question completely.
No, I said, when did you decide to write the book, or just compile all these interviews together and publish them?
Well, when when I won the Global Blog Awards, I like I said, I was in immediate contact with Ukiyoto, and they were taking me by the hand and into the process. For the second book, as I said, once again, we were in contact September of last year. So I started putting together the material. My process normally is, because of the fact that in the blog, I usually write a little bit more colloquially and a little bit more, since let's say about 95% of my readers are in the Dominican Republic, and they usually know, if not completely, they know quite a bit about some of the people that I write about. The writing there is a little bit more easy to read, a little bit more simple. So turning the writing into the book, I once again revisit each one of the articles, and I then look at it from the perspective of, okay, who's reading me now is not from the Dominican Republic and does not know the person I'm writing about. So that makes me edit the article more into a third person article, more into including, instead of saying in the country, I make sure that I put in the Dominican Republic, so that the people that are reading know which country that I'm talking about. It might be that I write a slang term in the article, so because the slang term will not be known outside of the Dominican Republic, I readjust the writing of that. If it's in an interview, such as the third book, there I go in and once again, I reformulate the questions. I make sure that the replies do not have, sometimes we like to use like UP instead of putting Ukiyoto Publishing. Well, you know, it's, I think today in the entire world, people are using more to shorten words by using initials and all of that, such as QR codes. Okay, well, I make sure that I put somewhere that a QR code is a quick response code. So once that part of it is done, and I feel that I have the book completely in its entirety in Spanish correct, I send it to, I have a very good friend of mine, his name is Alexis Mendez, who is also a radio producer. And he is like myself, he is involved in promoting culture in the Dominican Republic. And he has a lot of expertise in editing writings. So I send it to him and he goes over it with a fine-tooth comb in Spanish. So once that is done and he gives it back to me, then I go into the process of translating the entire book into English. And that process, although it's a little time consuming, to me it's easier because, as I said, English to me is my first language. I grew up and I stayed for over 25 years living in the United States. So when I came back to the Dominican Republic, as now an older person, I actually had to learn Spanish because my Spanish was terrible. But it is today my Spanish obviously is very good because I have now lived back in the Dominican Republic since the early 1980s. But I still do a lot of my thinking and a lot of my writing in English, translated back into Spanish or vice versa. But then once that is done, I go in and each artist, I make sure that I look into their Spotify page or into their YouTube page or into their personal web page to make sure that what I have written, I can grab a video or I can grab a audio file that will depict best that the artist that I just finished writing about. So then I'll convert the Spotify URL or the YouTube URL into a quick response code. And so I will do the same thing for the picture. I will go and see the best picture that I can possibly have or obtain for each one of these people. And then I put together the book file. The book file is interesting because I send up everything that is in writing, and the QR codes are sent in one file. Then all of the pictures of the artist, because of the size, are sent in a second file. And then there is a third file containing up-to-date information on what's called the author file. And I really have liked how easy Ukiyoto makes everything that we do as writers. Usually, the response time on queries is from fast to very fast, very clear. If I have questions throughout the process, I get as much help as I ask for. Obviously, if I do not ask, I will not get, but when I do ask, it's an immediate reply. Obviously, it depends on what time I send my reply because of the fact of the time difference. But I have not had one single problem with it. The way that we do the entire process until the end of having the book published and then put onto the Ukiyoto page and onto the Ukiyoto's Amazon page is super easy. And then from there, promoting the book, whether it be through the media pages that Ukiyoto has, and then through the URLs that they share with me that I then have, I think that each book gets a lot of promotion. As soon as the book is ready, I write an email and I write a personal message to each one of the actors that were in the book. And I tell them, listen, the book is out. It is available in Amazon. Here are the links. And if you want, here that you can use for you to promote that you are in a book. So then I get them involved in helping to promote that they're in a book, that the book was written by Jason Dominicana, or Fernando, and that it was published by Ukiyoto. So I make them participants in also helping to get themselves known and to have known that there is a lot of possibilities for them now that they're in a book, and that they can promote at the same time. I have actually had a few people send me queries on if they can themselves send a book to be published with Ukiyoto, and obviously I tell them yes. I share with them the Ukiyoto's email, and I tell them, please tell them when you write to them that Fernando from Santo Domingo was who recommended them. So hopefully there will be more authors from our country in different areas. But like I said, I'm so proud of belonging to the Ukiyoto's line of publishers. I have read a few of the authors that are part of the team, And it really makes it so worthwhile to go through the entire process and to be able to give and to be able to give to my country back in as much as that there are finally not one, not two, but three books, and hopefully more on the way, about jazz in our country. It's not the entire history of jazz, but at least it brings the two interview books.
It's a representation.
Excuse me?
It's a
it's a good
representation of your
yes,
music. And
yeah, it's a good representation. So far, if you think about it, it's actually been the 50 women in the women jazz book, and the interviews that I have made are now let me see, 19 musicians and 7 radio producers. So eventually, this year it will all be musicians, and this year it'll be about 12 or 13. So probably by the next book we will have 30 musicians, 7 radio producers, and 50 women in jazz. That's a pretty nice amount of musicians that are actively doing jazz in the Dominican Republic or out of the Dominican Republic, like in the United States.
okay. So out of all the interviews that you did, like, what do you
You froze up. Are you there? Hello?
Oh, yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, I only heard out of the interviews, and that was it.
Okay, no. Out of all your interviews, like, which was your favorite? And what was something that you took away from these interviews?
Don't do that. To me,
Okay, leave that one out. Then just say
no,
what was your takeaway from the.
To me, each interview is special because I'm able to know each one of these so special, talented people in a more profound way than I did before. And so I like to be able to show them to the Dominican Republic and to the world, and yell with my loudest voice. We have some excellent musicians here in jazz that have absolutely nothing to in other words, they're even up to par with any jazz player in the United States or anywhere else, but they're here in the Dominican Republic. And so I'm able to come out and say there is more to the Dominican Republic music-wise than merengue or bachata. We have jazz, and we have damn good jazz in our country. There was one quote, which I don't remember it by heart, but there was one quote from one of the musicians that he wrote to one of the answers. His name is Alfredo Balcázar. He's a young guitar player. And so he replied, "It is up to us to leave a written legacy of what we do, not for ourselves, but for future generations." And I really highlighted his reply because that's exactly why I do what I do. I don't do this to make money. I don't do this because obviously, the books aren't big sellers anymore. My blog is free, and I've written over 1,860 articles in 15 years. But the legacy that we can leave is to be able to, at least in this 15-year period since I created Jazz in Dominicana, there are 15 years of jazz history from our country in its pages. It does not have 100%, but it has a very good amount of what has been done and what is being done and what will be done in this so loved genre that I have in our country and in the world. Because one of the things about the blog is that the statistics are available, and our blog is read in around 54 different countries, whether it be only one entry or various. So that makes me really proud as well that around more than 50 countries in the world, at least one person went in and saw an article or two articles or three articles. So the exposure gets out there. And that's what I took on as my mission in life 15 years ago. It started as a blog and it grew. I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would write a book or two or three or four, but thanks to Ukiyoto, I have and I will, and we will continue.
So, Fernando, this is my last question to you.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for the young artists out there who are just starting out or want exposure and are trying to make it in the music industry?
To young authors, I always say is always keep writing. Writers get writer's block. Musicians get musician's block, and all artists get a block. Our muse sometimes goes away, but the way to reinvite the muse is to keep writing. You keep writing and the ideas keep coming back. I usually keep a notebook close by, and when an idea comes in, I'll write it. I might not do anything with it for 3 years, but one day I'll go, wow, I wrote that 3 years ago. And so always keep writing. Then also be always around, or try to be around people that will help you culture around you. So if your writing is about poetry, always be around poets. If your writing is about history, always be around scholars, because it helps you, it provides you with stimulation, it provides you with ideas, it makes you feel part of that particular group, and it makes your writing and your trip worthwhile. And then finally, once you initiate yourself into writing and into the idea of a book, get together with somebody such as Ukiyoto that will help you through the process, that will ease the way things are done, that will explain, that will take you by the hand until the completion, and then will take care of you afterwards. The amount of communications that I have had over this 2-year period, 15-month period, has been really exciting, has been excellent. And like I said, in my case, I feel part of the family. And it makes me very proud to be a member of the Ukiyoto publishers, writers, and part of my motivation to keep doing the interviews is knowing that I finally have a way of making those interviews come out to more than just the readers of the blog. I now have some form, which is the book, of being able to get it out to a larger audience around the world. And I'm so thankful for that.
We are very as part of our team as well. So that was it. That was my final question to you,
You,
Yeah, no, I was saying we are.